welcome. Thank you. It's so beautiful to see so many of you joining to hear Eric's an incredible story. We're going to have some students introducing and then taking questions at the end. So I'm just going to share, obviously, as we're putting this on as a second event of the Chabad Resiliency Series. And so I'd just like to share a very short message about today, actually. So today on the Jewish calendar is a very small, minor Jewish holiday. There are lots of Jewish holidays. Today is one of them. It's minor, but the relevance of today is incredibly important. So today is what's known as the second Passover. It's exactly 1 month since Passover. And the significance of the holiday today is about second chances, that it's never too late, that if we ever mess up, make a mistake, our past doesn't define us, and we can always move forward, put one foot in front of the other, take responsibility and make the changes that we need to do and the choices that we need to make to be our best selves, for ourselves, for our lives, for our relationships, and really for all of the world and humanity. So this is just so special that it wasn't planned, but that that Eric's talk about alcohol and drug addiction and recovery actually comes out today. So I think that's all I want to share. I said I would keep it brief, and I'm going to turn the mic over to Owen Foley, who is one of the Chabad Greek chairs on the Chabad student board. And I'm just gonna
Thanks, Lakey. I just want to say, first of all, it's very nice to see so many faces, both from Chabad and from the Greek community. Huge thanks to Chabad, IFC, and Panhill for hosting this event tonight. So tonight we have Eric Dyer. He's a Union alum, class of 2013. As Lakey was saying, he's someone who has overcome drug and alcohol addiction. So we're gonna hear what Eric has to say, hear his story. And then afterwards, there's going to be option for a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to voice those after he talks. If you'd like to do it anonymously as well, you can send in questions on the Google form from that email you got from me or Lakey. That's all I got. Eric, I'll let you take it away.
Very good. Thank you, Owen. Lakey, thank you for a few weeks ago reaching out to me to ask me to speak. Rabbi Rubin, thank you to you as well for asking me to speak. Your brother and I, Rabbi Rubin, over the last few years have become very close, and he's been tremendously helpful in my entire journey. So I really appreciate that. So I guess, this is a little different for me. So I've had the opportunity to speak at a lot of different schools, a few in the capital region. I've never been invited to speak at Union College. I think maybe the damage I did there, maybe they just didn't want me back. I don't know what happened. But this is really interesting and cool for me just because, I mean, I went to Union College, and a big chunk of my trials and tribulations as someone struggling with alcoholism and drug addiction happened at Union College. So I know there's some Theta Delta Chi people in here. I was in Theta Delta Chi. I do not attribute Theta Delta Chi to my alcoholism or drug addiction. My mom used to always say, like, Eric, like those kids in the fraternity, like they really, really must have like messed you up. Like, is that why you need to go to rehab? And I was like, Mom, I have to be honest. Like, I'm the bad influence on that. Like, I am the bad person here. It's not them. You know, like everyone, like as part of, as you guys know, like the pledging process, like involves obviously like a lot of like partying and drinking. And like, I wasn't like my other peers. They were not going through the same things I was going through in terms of like having to leave school and all the struggles I went through. So what I like to do is start with like how it all started for me, because one of the questions I get like a lot is people will say things to me like, well, Eric, like you don't look like a drug addict. Like you don't look like someone that struggled with these issues. Like you don't look like anything hard has ever happened to you in your life ever. Right. So like how could this have happened to you? And for me, it's like I grew up with like two very, very loving parents. I went to Jewish private school growing up, like wore a yarmulke every day to school. Like we prayed for like 30 minutes to an hour in the morning, like very involved in the Jewish community. doing like all the things like a good Jewish kid from Newton, which is right outside of Boston, for those of you guys who don't know, is like supposed to do. Eventually, parents get divorced, transfer over to public school, which like I was upset about at the time because like I had all my friends in like from like up until 4th grade growing up, but like went to public school, already knew some guys there from just like growing up in the neighborhood. Went to public school, and like that was like 5th grade, and that's like the first time this whole concept of like popularity and like fitting in became like something that was like important to me, something that like I really like had to like think about in my life. And it was probably like a year or two after transferring where like I met like this girl. For the purposes of this, I'll call her Sarah. And like I fell in love with Sarah, as in like I'm going to marry Sarah. Like this is the first love of my life. I'm so excited. This is great. And like I'll never forget the feeling of finding out that like Sarah did not love me back, but she was like, we're going right to the friend zone. And she like really liked my best friend. And like that was one of the first experiences I had like super early on where I was like this doesn't like feel very good. Like I feel like very uncomfortable. And I think that's like, especially in like that like middle school years, is very common. Like it wasn't like unique to me. It wasn't anything like special about me. Like I'm sure like more than just me on this Zoom meeting has had their heart shattered before at one point in their life. And that experience, like I remember like taking it and like moving on, and like I really like sports. So like I could play sports. I played hockey. I could like throw myself into like sports, but like I never, it always like kind of like stung a little bit. And at the time we did all the stuff like the Dare. I don't know if any of you had like the Dare program where you grew up, but like the Dare program, like just say no, don't do drugs. And like 7th grade, end of 7th grade comes around, and like people start talking about smoking marijuana. And like I'd overheard it from some friends. We had like the kid in our grade who had like, he had like more of a beard than I do right now in like 7th grade, because he had been like held back, and it was just like he was older than us and looked older than us. And he like through his older friends like brought some weed into the picture. And like I remember we were at his house, and he's like, do you want to try smoking weed? And I was like, I remember Dare just say no, like this is bad, I shouldn't do it. But at like the time that just didn't, I don't know. I felt like the whole, like going back to that, like feeling good, like fitting in, the popularity thing, like maybe like the girl not liking me, like this was like another thing to maybe try to make myself feel good. And I tried smoking pot that weekend. Like I absolutely loved it. I was like probably about 13 years old at the time, 7th grade, 13, 14. And from then on, like that became like a large part of my identity through like 7th and 8th grade. And like I look back at it now, because like I have family members who are 7th and 8th grade. I'm like, I cannot believe I was doing that in 7th and 8th grade. But like for me, the first time I tried smoking pot, it was truly like a light switch where I was like, I could get used to like feeling like this all the time. And so it wasn't like I remember my friends being like, we have to wait for the weekend to do this. And I was like, I don't really want to wait until the weekend to do this. And so like the remainder of like middle school was like a lot of like smoking pot when we could. We were like still very young, hard to get, all that stuff. But eventually, at least for me, like we all kind of got to a point where like the alcohol started getting brought into the picture. And I remember thinking when like people started saying like, hey, do you want to drink? I, for some reason, then took like this like moral high ground. So like I'm willing to like smoke pot, which this is like early 2000s. It's not like it is now. Like it was definitely like very illegal. It wasn't like now it's like a lot of state, whatever, like especially here where I live in Massachusetts, it's legal. It's not as big of a deal. But like then it was like definitely a big deal. And like I took this moral high ground with my friends about drinking in like 8th, 9th grade. I was like, I'm not going to drink. And the reason I'm not going to drink is because I have a dad who always identifies as an alcoholic. And at the time, to me, what an alcoholic meant is probably like it does to many people listening tonight, which is like, I thought of him as like a brown bag drunk who was like homeless and like couldn't stop himself from drinking and had all these terrible consequences. But like my dad was sober my whole life. So like, I didn't really view it like that. So I always took this position of like, I'm not going to drink because my dad's an alcoholic. But like through the continuous smoking pot and like really enjoying smoking pot, like eventually, like at least for me, my experience was my inhibitions were lowered. One night, like my whole like moral high ground, I can't drink because my dad's an alcoholic, was like thrown out the door. I drank for the first time, probably like sophomore year, got like sick as a dog, wound up like a lot of like my drunk stories would be at a McDonald's parking lot at the end of the night. And like someone had to call my dad, like an alcoholic who's in recovery for like decades, hasn't drank, to come get me. And that was the first time where like my dad, like just like the next day essentially said to me, like, Eric, I just want to let you know, like, if you have the condition of alcoholism, because he would refer to it as like an illness or a disease. He's like, if you have what I have, like, you are going to be miserable if you continue on this path or you will die. Like, if you don't get to that point, because like, that is just like plain and simple, like what happens to people that have what I have. And he's like, I'm not telling you have that, but like, you've been for years already as like a little kid, like you've already tried smoking pot. Like he was aware of that. He's like, now you're drinking and like, clearly you're not very good at this drinking thing. Like your first time drinking, you're getting sick and like, you can't control how much you drink. And like, that was like the first like signpost from someone in my life being like, maybe, just maybe you drink differently than like your peers, than your friends. And like from the rest of high school on, like my behaviors continue that way. Like I really liked drinking. I played hockey. I played lacrosse, captain of the lacrosse team. Like it came with like the whole like persona, I guess, like got like senior superlative for like biggest party animal. Maybe the only reason why Union allowed me to go there. but like all of these things, like it became my entire identity. And like I did things in high school through my drinking and like smoking a lot of pot where like I tried cocaine at the age of like 16, started like trying painkillers, probably like 16, 17. And like they were all very normal things to me at the time. I remember thinking that. And in large part, it was because it was like what I was like doing regularly and like my mindset with all those, with like what drugs and alcohol did to me, which is like, it wasn't a problem in my life. Like it was truly like the solution for living. Cause like, when that girl, Sarah, broke my heart, like I didn't have to think about things like that. Like I could be relieved of like that disturbance of like not feeling comfortable with myself. And like going through the rest of high school, like I said, eventually got into Union College and I went to Union and I remember I lived in the Davidson basement my first year. And I remember saying to myself, like, I promise it's going to be different this time. I partied for 4 years in high school, did like all the things I could have like ever wanted to do, like lived a life in high school like that my experience was a lot of other people didn't get to do. Like, I'm good, I'm done. I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity to be at Union and I'm going to be like good. That lasted probably no more than 2 to 3 hours on the Union campus. And like, I truly, truly meant it with all my intentions. Like if you had asked me on my ride up there, like my dad drove me up there, like, and if he had asked me, like, I truly believed that like this time it was going to be different and I was going to do things differently. And it wasn't not long where at Union, I was doing all the same things I was doing in high school, which is like, I found like where I could get like as much booze as I wanted, like where I could get cocaine, where I could get pills, where I could like drink as much as I wanted. It's like the first night in Davidson, I think I got written up because I took the common room table and I brought it into our room to play beer pong, like not thinking it was going to be that big of a deal. And they're like, you definitely cannot do that. You know, like you hear the ball, like the doors are thin, all that. And my like freshman, sophomore year was a lot like that. Like I got to a point and like, I don't know if you still have the point system at Union. Like I got to there was essentially like I had to go to a few of the deans and they gave me like my last chance. Like, this is it. Like you're at like 9, it was out of 10, maybe I had like 8 or 9 points. Like I had to keep going to counselors and doing like community. Like I had to do all these different things to stay at Union, got on academic probation, all that. And the thing that saved me truly from having to leave Union was like getting into Theta Delta Chi and like moving to the fraternity house and like not having people write us up anymore. Because at the time, like they just didn't really come through the fraternity houses. But like once I moved into the fraternity my junior year, I had also brought a habit with me that I had been using a lot back when I was back in Boston, back home for like that long like winter break and over the summers, which was like I fell in love with this drug called Oxycontin. And like for quite a while, I would try my best to like use it at home in Boston with my Boston friends, and I wouldn't try to bring it back to Union because like at Union, like I liked the drinking, the at the time what I thought was casual cocaine use, but I now know there's no such really thing as like that's a hard drug. You shouldn't be doing it. But coming to a point where like I started bringing it back to Union and it became a part of my life at Union. And it was like one of the first times where like people in TD Chi like looked at me and they were like, dude, I think you have a problem. And I remember thinking like, how dare the people of Theta Delta Chi, who all, in my opinion, have problems, tell me that like I have a problem with something. Cause like I drank with all them, like we did all the like the crazy things together. So I remember thinking like, how could they be telling me I have a problem? And like looking back at it, it's like the fact they even like had the courage to say something to me was like a big deal. Cause like clearly I was starting to cross lines like I shouldn't be crossing. And like the lines, like particularly was like bringing Oxycontin, as you may know, like a very, very strong opiate, and like doing that, like mixing it, especially with like a lot of drinking, some other prescription drugs, and like coming like very close to the point where like I look back now and it's like, I cannot believe like I didn't die. Like, I don't know how I didn't. Like, I've had friends die from using pills and drinking. And like, that's like what I was doing. And like, I was fortunate that like that despite how insane from like a party perspective, a lot of my like fraternity brothers were like, they definitely spoke up in the context about like me abusing the painkillers, and they tried to get in the way of my using. But a lot of the strategy at the time, and I don't blame them for this, was like, why can't you just like drink? Why can't you just smoke pot? Like, why can't you just do what we're doing? Like, why do you have to do this other stuff? And by the time I was a junior at Union, like I was physically addicted to the drug. So what that looked like for me was like, if I woke up in the morning and I did not have like the prescription painkillers I was using, I would get like violently ill, like pretty quick. And like the biggest problem, especially at the time with this drug, was that like there wasn't like it wasn't like widely accessible. And to the extent it was accessible, it was very, very expensive. And like as a college kid, I didn't just have like unlimited funds to just be like going around and like constantly finding all these pills for myself. And so like I found myself on this like roller coaster ride for a lot of my junior year of just being like sick physically from like using the drug, then not using the drug. And like I found at the end of my junior year, being in Theta Delta Chi, like the house, like I don't know if it's still the house now, but like the one right by the football field, like past the hockey rink. And like I had a single, and despite having like the 30, 40 guys in the house and like having these big parties, like I was like completely alone, like despite having everyone there, because like the drugs especially the Oxycontin, had taken me to a place where like I just like wanted to be alone, because that's like the only thing I could think about or care about. And it was like the first time where like people talk about things like you hear people talk about like, oh, have you hit like your rock bottom? Like my experience was that like one of the worst bottoms I hit was like that feeling of aloneness when like there's so many people around you, and like knowing that I shouldn't be doing this anymore, but like I was incapable of stopping even when I really wanted to. And like where the big event happened for me, it thankfully like wasn't an overdose. It was not an overdose. It wasn't a hospitalization. I have no idea how that like never happened. I'd come very close many times to like getting very, very sick or being in positions where I definitely should have gone to the hospital, things like that. And it was my end of my junior year. I was moving out of Theta Delta Chi. We got an off-campus house, a bunch of us, for senior year. And I was staying there for the summer. I had just started, probably a few months before that, started dating this girl from Union who I had wanted to date this girl at Union since like my freshman year. And like, just like from the beginning, like that story in the beginning, like this girl had just like completely friend zoned me, was like, you're great, but like, I'm a freshman. I'd rather date older guys, not you right now. So let's just stay friends. But eventually came to a point where like junior year, we got a lot closer, started dating, and like we'd always party together and had fun. But I think once we started dating, she started to realize like, oh, you don't just do this on like the Wednesday night Union thing or like the Friday, Saturday thing. Like you drink and drug like this, like daily, like your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they all look the same. Like you do the same thing pretty much every day. And so we moved in. She was going to stay at this off-campus house while she was doing she was in the LIM program. She was going to stay in the off-campus house with myself and a few other people. And I lasted in that house with her living there with me, like maybe 48 hours, maybe. And it was my 21st birthday. I came home. And I come home and like, she looks right at me and she can tell, like I had been promising her I was going to stop. And I'd been promising her, like I was like laying off like the Oxycontin and I wasn't really doing any opiates anymore. And I had been like taking other medicine to offset it. So I was like getting better, and it was like all lies, like just all like lies on top of lies. And I came home the night of my 21st birthday. I was like late for like this little like thing, like party they were having, like they had like set up banners and all that stuff. And I was like late for that. I walk in the door and like, she can right away tell like I'm pretty much high. Like I'd always been, and she could tell. Cause like when you use a drug like that, your pupils become like pinpoint small, and like, there was no way for me to hide it. She knew like right away. And like, she just like looked right at me and she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like you can't do this anymore. Like, I don't know what to tell you, Eric, but like, this isn't going to work. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I love you so much. Like, I'm ready to like be done with this. I'm ready to move on. And she's like, great. Like, do you have any drugs on you right now? And I was like, as a matter of fact, I do. I have about 30 pills on me right now. So at the time, those 30 pills probably worth about $1,000. And what I had done was I used my mom's credit card at the Union bookstore to like charge like a MacBook Pro to the bookstore. Took it, brought it with me to go see a drug dealer in Albany. Use that, right? And I knew I had like one chance at this because like my mom was pretty sharp at the time. She knew something was going on. Like as soon as she saw that credit card charge, I knew she was like taking away the card. So I had like one chance to do it. I get these like 30 pills. And I said to my girlfriend at the time, I was like, I have these 30 pills, but like what we're going to do, I'm like explaining to her how I'm going to get better. Like once again. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use the 30 pills to wean myself off so I don't get so sick. And like, if you just let me use these pills for the next few days, like everything's going to be okay. And I'll never go back to it again. And I was like hoping for some sympathy because that weekend was my sister's wedding on Cape Cod. So like, I knew I was going to need something because I wouldn't be able to go if I would have been too sick. I was using so much at the time that I really needed something in my body, needed these pills in my body constantly. And she like, I thought she was agreeing with me. And so in my head, I'm like, I'm going to give her these pills and she's going to get like one of those Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like pill containers, like, split them up for me so I can wean off. And so I give her the pills. She like goes in the other room and like, I hear the toilet flush. And like, as someone like addicted to drugs, like physically addicted to those drugs, and I heard the toilet flush and knowing like I'm not going to be able to get more, like my whole, like I literally felt like my world had like collapsed because I was like, that's like all I had. I needed it so bad. Can't go to my sister's wedding now. Definitely going to get sick now. Like all of these things start going through my head. And what my girlfriend did that night, besides just flush those pills on the toilet, is she had called my mom without telling me. And the next morning, my mom drove from Boston, showed up at Union, and she took me from Union back home. And the next day, so the day after my 21st birthday, I wound up going to my first detox in a hospital. And from like, this is June of 2011, from June of 2011 to November of 2011, I found myself bouncing in and out of like different detoxes. Cause like, even though like my parents were aware and like, I knew I shouldn't stop, like I just couldn't stop using. I found that my use got like a lot worse, not just with the amount I used, but like the things I was doing, like spiritually. Like I started like not just using like a credit card, but like stealing from people that I really loved and cared about and using that money to like go buy more drugs. And it wasn't until November of 2011 where my parents used this mechanism in Massachusetts, where Massachusetts is one of two states where if you're addicted to drugs, the court can sanction you to treatment. Like they can have a police officer come to your house, pick you up, bring you to treatment. And the place you go to has to be a lockdown facility because it's done through a warrant process. It's done with the police and everything. And like my dad is a lawyer, and he made very clear to me at the time that like you literally have two choices. Like I will go to court and I will get this warrant. So you have to go to essentially like a lockdown facility that's like attached to a jail, or you can go to some like rehab in Massachusetts that your insurance will cover. But we can't keep doing this in and out of treatment thing and you stealing from people and using drugs. He said, you're going to either die or wind up in jail. And he said, Eric, I have to be very honest with you. You do not look like someone that would do very well in jail. And like, I remember always laughing at that because he's obviously very right. My dad is more of like, he's very like Boston-ish. Like he's got like the Boston accent, Boston story. So like he had experience with this and like, he was like, it's just not going to go well for you. So trust me, Eric, take the option, go to treatment. And November 2011, I went to treatment. I did not want to go to treatment. I had no intentions on stopping from treatment. I thought I was going to leave treatment and go back to being like someone who could just like smoke a little weed and drink, despite the fact that that was like never part of my story or my experience. And so I went to your like what you would see on like a TV show or like the movies. Like I guess if you've ever seen like Intervention, they send them to these like nice treatment places. My parents sent me to like a decently nice place. It wasn't like they don't love me enough apparently to send me to like a very fancy place, right? In like Malibu or something. But it was like a nice place in Massachusetts. And when I was in that program, I was just like super fortunate to have people who like could really relate to me, like what was wrong with me. And like I said, like I always had a dad who would say to me, like, Eric, I'm an alcoholic. You should be really careful about the way you drink. Like it runs in our family. Like you should be really careful about if you're going to use drugs. Cause again, it runs in our family. And like, I always rejected that because my dad did not grow up the way he didn't grow up in like a suburb like Newton, Massachusetts. He grew up in the city. My dad was like an IV heroin addict who was like in and out of jail a lot of his life. He was homeless a lot of his life. And like, he turned his life around through being in jail, getting like a GED, and like eventually through some like amazing stuff, becoming a lawyer. So like his story was just like, I wasn't that. Like I was at Union College. Like I at least thought I was doing things with my life. So like, I always kind of like, I didn't identify with his story. I really just compared to like how we were different. But like in the last treatment center I went to, there was just like a counselor in there who like got the idea through my head. He broke down my ability to rationalize and justify everything I was doing. Like he really showed me that, like he said, Eric, you're in a fraternity. All your buddies drink, right? I was like, yeah. It's like they party, probably do other drugs. I'm like, yeah, sure. He's like, do they like go to like multiple detoxes over like a few months span? Like, does their insurance company like call them to like find out about like where they're going next for like reimbursement stuff? I'm like, no. He's like, well, like clearly you're a very sick person. He's like, because insurance companies like don't just pay for people to get treatment unless like they really need it. And like your insurance company keeps paying for all these places. Like you clearly have a lot of issues. And like that was like the first time someone like really broke through to me that like maybe from the beginning, like my drinking and drugging was a little different. And that maybe like when I honestly promised myself and others that I was going to stop, like maybe I really wasn't on my own capable of that. And like, it was the first time I really had to reach out and say, like, I'm going to need help from other people to do this. And that was like a monumental step in like the the recovery process, because throughout my time in high school and at Union, when like I knew deep down something wasn't right, and I knew I shouldn't be doing what I was doing, but like I couldn't stop on my own. Like I tried a lot of different ways and strategies. Like even with the drinking, I would try things like, I'm not going to drink hard liquor. I'm just going to drink beer. And like it literally that just like didn't work for me. Like with the pills, I would try to like spread them out or have a friend hold, like none of it ever worked for me. And it wasn't until this last treatment center that like I had to learn, like I was truly like helpless, and like I needed to reach out to someone who had some hope and could like give me, at least temporarily, like some of the hope they had. And like from 2011 to the present day, that has like really been my experience, which is that like I definitely have like a physical issue with drugs and alcohol. Like when I put drugs and alcohol in my body, I don't get to decide when like I'm going to stop using them. My lived experience has like shown me that over the 9 to 10 years that I tried to control the amount I could drink. I also learned that like even when I would go to like one of these, like a 30-day rehab program, that despite being like physically removed from drugs and alcohol and knowing like I shouldn't do it, I constantly had this voice in my head that would tell me like, no, like you still can do it. Like you can just like, you can do it one more time and then stop. Like just give it one, just this time will be different. Like these like constant like thoughts in my head, which like I knew based on the consequences that were racking up in my life, like didn't make any sense. So like I knew I had like knowledge about all of these things, but like I couldn't figure out like what, like why was that the case? And over like the last 9 years, like at least my experience has been that the reason myself and like a lot of people that like I get to interact with today who struggle with a lot of things I've struggled with is that like I'm just like I'm deeply disturbed with myself in the world, like when I'm not changing the way I feel. And the ability to like change the way I feel through drugs and alcohol like wasn't going to last that long for me. Like the typical like opiate addict like is usually dead by the age of like 25, 27. And so like I didn't have like much time like left. And what I found was like, despite knowing about that physical and like mental component of having all these issues, was that like that disturbance that I had, like I had to find a way to like get at peace with that disturbance. And it was over like, again, these like last like 8-9 years where like I was just really fortunate to be introduced to people that showed me that like that could be replaced by having I guess like what in like very general terms would be like a spiritual way of living. And that like spiritual way of living for me has really looked like finding ways to not like constantly think about myself, like finding ways to help other people freely because like I want to help them. And those were all things that like I would think as like a good Jewish kid growing up, like going to Jewish private school, like I would have picked up on and learned. And like those were definitely like themes throughout my life. But like I was so uncomfortable with myself and the world around me that like I had to find a way to like get at peace with myself. And like the answer for me, like I said, was always like drugs and alcohol until it wasn't anymore. And like the life that I get to have today, because like I was able to through a lot of help, like I talked about, stop using drugs or alcohol, has allowed me to like to take the struggles I have and like get to do things like this, like talk to students, but also like help people who were like 21 years old like I was and like also struggled with the same things I struggled with. And like that to me is like I'll get into it here because it's sponsored by Chabad. I usually like don't get too deep into this, but like that to me has been like a very important way where I've like connected with like this understanding of a God that like I never had, which is like getting to connect with other people through like helping them with the same issues that like I had, and like trying in some way, just like someone did for me years ago, which is like provide hope that it's like, if you have this feeling where you cannot stop and you really want to, and you keep trying and you can't, like there's people out there that have done it and like you can too. And like, here is exactly how we did it. And so like, I get to do things like that today. And because I've like gotten to do things like that today, and because I was able through, again, like a lot of help, like put down drugs and alcohol, like I've been able to do things like that I just didn't think were going to be available for me. Like when I was like 21 years old and leaving Union College and going to rehab. Cause like that year I went on like a medical leave, and like I remember thinking like, will I ever go back to school? You know, but like through going through the treatment process and getting into this like life of recovery from drugs and alcohol, I got to go back to Union. I got to go to law school. Like I got to like go become a lawyer. Like now I recently like got to open up a business where like I get to like have sober men come live at this house in Massachusetts that are struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. And like by far like the biggest thing that like has come from all of this has been that like the girlfriend who flushed all the pills down the toilet, like we got to get married 5 years ago. And like we have this like unbelievable life together today where like it's crazy to think about, because when we met at 18, there was like a Facebook picture of us, like it was freshman year Facebook picture, and I posted a comment on the picture and I said I'm gonna marry that girl on the left. And like she probably thought I was insane, but like I truly like knew right when we met, I was like this is like exactly like the Jewish girl I would love to be with. And like we got to go through this like incredibly difficult thing together and like grow from it and see that like despite there being like so much like darkness for those years, it has served as something where today like we can truly use it as a way to like for both of us like bring like light into the world where like other people like may have that darkness. And it's truly been like, if it wasn't for Union College, we never would have met. I was fortunate to be at Union College. Like I'm to this day surprised I got in. And with her, I think Union College was fortunate to have her. She's truly brilliant. And like I don't know, like there's the life I get to live today, I try to share with other people, because if you know someone that is like struggling with this stuff, like it just like it doesn't have to be this way. Like you do not have to like go on to the bitter end or like go to sleep at night thinking like I'm not worth it or like I can't do it. Like there's so many people out there like myself. Like this is not like a very unique story to me. Like there's many people out there that can offer like help and hope and that are like absolutely willing to do it. So the last thing I'll leave you with is like if you have a friend who's like struggling, like please like do not hesitate to reach out to me. And if like you live somewhere far away from Boston, like maybe I can connect you with someone from that place. And like I would like truly be like honored and grateful to be able to do it. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And I'll close with thanking again Lakey and Rabbi Rubin for setting this up, and for everyone from Greek Life for being here. If you were forced to be here, I still thank you for being here. They used to force me to do this type of stuff all the time. But no, that's all I got. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Eric. Gwen's going to run the Q&A, but before we do, I just, I'm sitting here and I'm kind of speechless, just listening to your story actually for the first time and processing, you know, the experiences that you went through, and then really resonating with your like closing message of the meaning that you have in helping people. And I really love what you said about yourself and your wife, that with the challenges that you went through, incredible challenges, that you've come out like so much stronger and really have this incredibly beautiful relationship together, that I'm assuming a big focus of it is helping others. And that just speaks to me so much about resilience, that when we, you know, struggle and we go through hard times and we have someone that we can, you know, ask for support, or that we can reach out and support someone else, then there's so much, you know, beauty that can come out of it, and meaning and positivity. And, you know, you said right now, like everything that you do together is about bringing light and helping. So thank you. And thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure it's not an easy thing to do every time. So really appreciate it. And you should just know, I texted Eric, I'm like, hey, I got your number. Can you do this? And I think within a few minutes, he's like, yeah, Sure. So that was just like incredible. So thank you. Gwen, I'm going to pass it on to you now for the Q&A. Oh, wait, and I'm also just going to take one last second, sorry, Gwen, to plug next week at 8 p.m. is the last of the Resiliency Series, and look out for an email within the next 2 days of an incredible panel of parents that are going to be presenting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakey. Hi, Eric. I'm Gwyneth. I'm the president of Chabad. Thank you so much for sharing your story again. I'm really speechless and blown away. We have a lot of questions, so I'm just gonna pick the really good ones. So one of the questions is, how do you feel as though the work hard, play hard mindset of the union community contributes to this issue, and how can we work towards changing that mindset? I also want to like add my own questions to that. Do you think that the normalization of like smoking weed and drinking is problematic?
Oof. Very good questions. I definitely adopted like the work hard, play hard thing. I prided myself definitely on like being able to like party a lot and still play sports and get like decent enough grades to like get into college and do all that. And I mean, I think I don't necessarily see like the problem with like addiction specifically, my experience has been that like there's a subset of the population that I would include myself in that for whatever reason, when we drink or use drugs, like we're just incapable of stopping. It's been referred to before as like an allergy in the sense of like an abnormal reaction. And so like whether it's like someone like myself takes on this idea of like work hard, play hard, like, or if I just like reject that altogether, like regardless, the way I use drugs and alcohol is probably going to lead me down that path no matter what. And like the same thing goes like, cause like I get asked a lot about the whole like marijuana being legal thing. Like I personally think for like, again, someone like myself, like I can't safely use marijuana. And like, I have no doubt in my mind that like marijuana like started this whole journey for me, but like, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with the marijuana. It's more like the way like someone like myself and a lot of like my peers who are also in like recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction, like use it, which is that like once we use it, we can't stop. So.
Yeah. I guess that leads me to the next question, which is, what would you say to someone who doesn't believe that like alcoholism or addiction is an illness and rather like a choice?
So it depends who says it. If someone who's displaying alcoholic tendencies says it, then they could be an alcoholic. Like that would be, and I say that because it's like my experience, like it's always like one of the traits of having this, like the condition that I have when it comes to drugs and alcohol is like the denial factor, which is like the rationalization, justification, denial, like no way I could accept that I have this. So that would be like, if someone like who's displaying those tendencies and pushing back, that's like the first thing I would think. And for people who aren't in that position, they're looking at someone else who's like, how could they be doing this? Like, shouldn't they just use willpower? Like it's a moral issue. Like I frankly, I don't blame them. Like people like myself and the behaviors I had and like people I see today, like we do a lot of damage to the people in our lives, especially the people that like love us and care about us. So I understand that being the first reaction. And I would just like suggest that like, in those situations, like if that's truly how they feel, to like have a conversation with the person who's struggling with it. Cause I think if you really get down to like, why are you doing this? They'll realize like this person, like there's no like willpower, there's no choice or willpower here. Like that's been gone for years probably. So.
Yeah. Is there anything else other than like having a conversation with them? Like someone asked, how can we best be proactive about identifying and avoiding addiction in our friends and relatives?
I think it's like talking a lot about it. So like I said, like, so like I had a dad who like always talked about it. My mom is like she's not like a normal, she doesn't have a drug or alcohol problem. She like always had talked about like this fact that in my family history, and like my like fraternity brothers, despite like them, like not being like the best influences necessarily, like they were like pretty in my face about it. Like they were pretty clear with me that what I was doing compared to other people was like unacceptable, and like I needed to get help. And there were a few times at Union before I left where like, whether it was like my girlfriend or my fraternity brothers, they would try to like kind of step in to help me. And whether it was like offering resources or just saying like, hey, I'm always here to talk if you want to.
Yeah. Was anyone ever stepping in and like, did you ever think it was too much? Or like, do you think someone should have stepped in who didn't? Do you think there were like certain enablers in your life?
No, I was like really fortunate to have more support than enabling, which I think is relatively unique. Like a lot of people struggle for longer because they have a lot of people enabling in their life, whether it's like continuously like giving them money or being like, you can stay at my house. Like my parents are very clear all the time, like you can't stay here if you're gonna keep doing drugs. Like this isn't okay. And a lot of, again, my fraternity brothers, like in the beginning, it was like, haha. And then it was like, this isn't fun or funny anymore. So like they were pretty quick to jump in.
Yeah. Another person asked, as I'm sure you are aware, there's a huge stigma in this country regarding addiction and alcoholism. What do you think the best first steps are for fighting this stigma?
So I've been the last few years on the board of an organization called Friends of Recovery New York, where like that's like one of the main focuses is like advocacy around stigma. And I think a lot of it is like people going out and talking about what recovery is. Like all we hear about, and I think it's because it's just more exciting to hear about, is like you see people when they're struggling. Like if anyone were to look right now, like it's all over the news about like there's over 120 people that die a day from opiate addiction right now. Like that's like literally it's tens and tens of thousands of like young kids a year. So like that's all we hear about. And like there's not a lot of talk about like the positive recovery stories where like someone like myself like could have been dead at 21, but instead like I get to do things like this. And like it's not, again, not unique to me. There's so many people like that out there. And allowing A, their voices to be heard, and then B, having like a language that we use around it where it's like not a negative thing. Like I'm very like proud to be in recovery. Like I'm not shy about it. I'm very proud about it because like if it wasn't for that history that I had, I would never have had the life I have today. So
yeah. So that leads me to, what are your struggles like today? Like I know people always say addiction is an everyday battle. Is there like, what keeps you grounded to recovery?
my struggles, it's mostly things like ice cream now.
That's a great struggle.
Yes. Yeah. I joke with people because people will say to me like, so as a lawyer, like we go to like function, like I was at a bigger law firm before, and like our big annual event was at a casino in upstate New York. And so like, it's like, you're doing what you do at a casino, and people would be like, Eric, are you like comfortable here? And I'm like, I have to be honest with you. I'm not really thinking about drinking. I'm thinking about like, how many pieces of dessert am I going to have? And am I going to have the dessert? Like, that's like literally, that's like the blessing and the gift of like this lifestyle, is that the only time I really think about drugs or alcohol today is when I'm talking about drugs and alcohol like this. Like I used to wake up before recovery every single morning, all I could think about. And like that has been completely relieved. And today, the way I think it stays that way is little things like being grateful. Like I'm truly today was thinking about it and I was talking to a friend, like I'm grateful I'm just like alive today. Like I shouldn't be 30 years old getting to do the things I've been doing today. Like the now millions of people that have like died from this. Like I could have just been one of those people. And like, I try to be grateful for being alive. And I try to, as much as I can, like help other people, even when like I would prefer to just like stay home at night and watch Netflix and not like get out of myself. And like the gratitude as like an action and really trying my best to help other people when I can have been like the consistent things that have been like, I don't know if I'd be able to like keep the sobriety that I have today without it.
Yeah. So when you were going through that every day of like, I need drugs, like I can't do this without drugs, how were you able to manage to do school, do so well in your sports, and function as like pretty much a normal college student with these struggles?
Um, I was not, by the time I got to Union, there was no good at sports anymore. That ship had sailed, but I wouldn't say I did like too well in school. I hit for the cycle. Like I got every grade there was at my time at Union, and I should have been the class of 2012, not 2013. So like there was like a lot of dropping classes, and like I'd failed a class, which I didn't even know you could do at Union. Like I thought they just like as long as you just show up and take the test, like you'll be fine. And like I wasn't. So like I got a D too, which is like the same thing. It's like I didn't even know they gave D's, but like I did not. I was holding on by a thread. I really like. I'm surprised I passed any of the classes.
Yeah. Well, you're doing so well today. You said you're a lawyer, you went to law school. Sounds pretty good to me. This leads me to the next question. Sorry to like backtrack a little, but this person asked, is your wife also sober? And how do you handle situations where people drink socially around you? And you sort of said that you would much rather focus on the dessert. But like when you go out to eat at restaurants, I'm sure like they always ask, oh, like, do you want to drink? Like, how do you like handle that? Like, does it still bother you, or are you just unfazed?
Yeah. So my wife is not an alcoholic and she's not sober. She's not like she's just, she's like a normal person. Like if she wants a little wine, she'll like have a little wine. So because people ask me like, oh, do you have to be with someone who's like, do you have to be with someone who's also sober? And like, that has not been my experience. And it's not been the experience of like many of my friends who are also sober. And in social settings, like the entire purpose, and like, I didn't get too deep into it here just cause like it can be tough to like do, especially over Zoom, but the program of recovery that like I really focus a lot on for like, I come from like, I guess the family of recovery that is known as like abstinent based and like spiritual, like that is like how I continue on this path. And like, I believe that the reason I practice some of the, like a lot of my life involves like, there's like routine, like prayer type things that I do and like certain meditation things I do. And I do a lot of those things in addition to like helping other people, because that makes me like a lot freer and it gets rid of that like disturbance I'd mentioned before. And like, I feel very close to this, I feel very close to this like higher power in my life that like relieves me from that obsession I talked about, like that I used to wake up with. So when I'm doing those things, like I really don't think about it. Like I do the things I do today so that I can be a completely free person and then I can walk into any like club, bar, rest. I mean, I don't choose to do those things, but like for work things or whatever, like I have friends who drink. I really don't think it's not like, I truly feel that at least for today, I'm like completely relieved of the obsession. And I look at that and I'm like, what is in a drink or a drug for me is not the same thing that's in it for my wife who just wants to have like a sip. Like that's just not where my mind goes. So.
Yeah. So like, do you think there are any misconceptions about addiction? And like, kind of along with that, what do you think of moderation? Like, does that work? Or if you like have the illness of addiction, like the only solution is just completely withdrawing?
I think moderation can work for people who don't have like the condition that I have. Like this, I don't see like when I am in active use, like there's no like power of choice involved. Like I'm not choosing to like steal from people. I'm not choosing to hurt people. Like I take responsibility for those things because I did it, right? But there's no choice. Like I will do anything to get that drug. And like, I've proven now, because like now that I'm removed from it and I have this lifestyle, like my life is nowhere even close to like what it was like 10 years ago. And that's like really, like for someone like me, the idea of moderation is not only, I think, impossible, but it also would be very miserable, because today, like the function of having like an abstinence life for me is part of the way that like I have that like spiritual connection I was talking about. So it's like the two kind of go hand in hand. And if I was constantly like, because for me, if you told me, Eric, you can drink once a month, you get once a month where you can party, ecstasy, drink, whatever you want, have as much fun as you want. Like the other 29 days, I would just think about that day. Like that's all I would think about. There would be no like in between. And then I'd be miserable those 29 days, just waiting for like to live for one day a month. And like today I get to live for all 30 days without it. So.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we're out of time, but I just want to thank you so much. And I'm like really inspired by your story, and I'm sure it made an impact on everyone else here too. Thank you so much, Lakey, for hosting this event. Thank you to Panhel and the IFC for coming. Thank you, Owen. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This was a really great turnout. I'm going to pass it back to Lakey.
Thank you, Gwen. Did a great job. And thank you, Eric, for answering all those questions. Yeah, it is 9 o'clock and we've actually kept a schedule, which is very good for Jewish people. So I think that unless anyone has any last words that they want to say or share, we can end it. So
I just want to say, Gwyneth, those were the best out of all the colleges I've done. Those are the best questions I've ever gotten. And I truly mean that. So thank you.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone for coming, for participating, asking questions, and a huge thank you for Eric. Really appreciate you taking the time and the energy emotionally and everything to,
Yeah.
You want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add something. You spoke about the spiritual path, and I think maybe a different time, I don't know if you'd be up to that, to speak about like what that path was. And because I think it could have ramifications to people even who are not in that addiction mode, but there's some beauty to it. And I think addiction is unique in that that's the only cure for it, meaning, and it brings spirituality into a real life situation and other people can learn from it. So I don't know if you'd be up to that a different time.
You've been voluntold. So
Yeah. Free of charge, anytime, let me know.
You're amazing. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. And stay safe and healthy. Make good choices and be well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank